Good morning or afternoon or evening wherever you are. Welcome back to 24 Days of Comfort, casual tea time check-ins every day until Christmas, where we just hang out and slow down a little. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of each month of the year of 2025. But before we do that, let's do our cozy check-in that's going to pop up on the screen. C is for getting comfortable, so see if you are comfortable. Move around a little bit. Maybe you want to put on pajamas or something. And then when you're ready, let's take a deep breath together. I'm going to close my eyes and we're going to do a deep inhale and a deep exhale. Whenever you're ready at your own pace, I'm going to start now. Releasing tension in the head, the forehead, the jaw, the neck, the shoulders, the arms, all the way to the fingers, and then the back, the belly, the hips, upper legs, knees, lower legs, all the way down to your toes, easing any tension. And then is there anything that you want right now or you need? Now that we're here and we're settled, do you maybe want to get up and get some tea? Do you want to put your phone on Do Not Disturb? Whatever it is. It's your you time and I hope that you enjoy it. I am very excited for today's video. I dressed up a little fancy because it kind of feels like we're giving out an award or something. And I don't know, I've been wearing pajamas in a lot of these videos and I just wanted to put something nice on in case you forgot who you're looking at. I'm kidding. But I thought it would be nice to dress up a little for the occasion. The tea that I'm drinking today is a day 18 tea. Tea is Dutch. 18 tea. And it is 3 fennel. And I'm having day 18 instead of 17 because 17 is Earl Grey and that I cannot drink. So 3 fennel, I'm going to be really honest, I already drank it all. And it's around a 7. I still haven't really properly looked into what I'm rating all the teas, and the end of this video series is approaching, so I might have to start writing them down. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but tomorrow's video does not include a tea, so if you miss it in tomorrow's video, that's right, we're just heading straight into a topic. Not to give any spoilers, but it's a video that I've been wanting to make for a really long time that was often requested, and I'm really proud of the intro, so definitely go watch that tomorrow. But today, here and now, we're back talking about books. I'm so excited. I know that I haven't done a lot of book videos, but suddenly I just lost all inspiration of what to make around the topic of books because all of this month I have been reading The Lord of the Rings. And actually, where did I put the book? I can show you. I'm filming this on the 15th, and this is all I've read this month. So reading has just been a bit of a less prominent thing in my life this month because I've been making so many videos. Because I'm making 24 videos here, and I also still have an ASMR video, so that's 28 videos in 1 month. And that's going to sound like a lot, but I can just kind of make these sort of back to back, and the ASMR videos are a bit more low-key. So it's been very doable. I'm still doing good. I am kind of excited about the end approaching, but that is why reading has just kind of fallen to the background a little, and that's part of life, and that's okay. But today I'm really excited because I'm going to talk about 12 books that were my favorite for each month. Now, these are not my 12 favorite books of the year, which might be confusing, but I've had months where I read shitty books and then one of them was my favorite. Not entirely sure how I feel about this list, but I have my reading journal here and I made a log of what I read every month. And I stuck in pictures. I'm a little bit behind. But in here is a book in a book that holds my favorite book of 2025. I did the thing where you kind of filter down what your favorites are. This system really isn't working for me. I don't like this system, so I'm not going to do it next year, but it was fun to do. And I did make a list of books that I enjoyed. So we're just going to dive right in. And don't worry, I will kind of talk about what my favorite books of the year then would be. I think I'm going to make an ASMR video about it, but I'll give you a quick rundown at the end of this video. January. The first book that I read, I finished it on January 6th, and it's my favorite of the month of January, is The Great Alone by Kirsten Hanna. This follows a family who decide to move to Alaska into the Great Alone. It's what the people there call it, and they go to a small town and they get this little house that is very beaten up, that needs a lot of love and care. It's a very abusive household that a little girl grows up in. It's about a little girl and her parents, and you kind of follow her throughout her life, dealing with her family issues, but also living in this harsh environment, being new in a new place, turning your life around. And I thought it was so moving, and I cried so much. It was a very touching story, and so it was my favorite of the month. I still think about it a lot. So yeah, January, The Great Alone. Then in February, my favorite was Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young, but it wasn't actually a favorite that would make it into a favorites list. It's just that I read shitty books the rest of that month. Out of the Woods follows a couple who kind of fell out of love and are rekindling their love by going on a trip. I believe it is like a group trip. And it kind of goes from there. I don't remember much about it because like it's not really a favorite. It was fun, but nothing to write home about. So yeah. Out of those 2 months, The Great Alone became my favorite. Then in March, I read These Letters End in Tears, and this is about 2 women falling in love where that is forbidden. I actually have it here. This book is about Bessem and Fatima, and they fall in love, and they live in Cameroon where being gay is illegal. This follows, like, this has a time span of 13 years or something. And Bessem loses Fatima and doesn't know where she is. And these letters, which this book consists of, is letters to Fatima from Bessem as she's figuring out where Fatima is and what happened to her and why she disappeared. And it's also very moving and very touching. Once again, not a book that would make it into my favorites list of the year, but of that month, it was definitely a favorite, and it was very touching, so I would still recommend it if you like an emotional read. And then in April, I read All Fours by Miranda July, and I have a lot of thoughts about this book, because this was one of those books that was definitely a favorite of the month, and like, I really, really loved it. So this follows a semi-famous artist who lives in LA, and she wants to go on a road trip. She has to go to New York for a business thing, and she decides to take the car and go on a road trip from LA to New York because she wants to kind of like challenge herself and reinvent herself and take control of her life. She's in her pre-menopausal state, I believe it is, and there's a lot of feminine rage involved. But on that road trip, like 20 minutes in, she takes a turn. And the book is less about an actual road trip, but the book itself is a road trip. I've talked about this book many times by now, but it is so hilarious. It is poetic at times. It is deep. It is weird. It is sexual. It is confusing. It is so many things. And I had a great time. I felt the whole spectrum of emotions during this read, and I really recommend it. Then in May, I made a whole vlog about this, but I read One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, and this is a good old summer romance, and it is the follow-up to Every Summer After, which is one of the first summer romances that I read and I was really moved by. It was childhood friends to lovers. It definitely made me fall in love with reading, and then finally years later Carly Fortune came out with One Golden Summer, and this follows Charlie Florek, who is the main character's brother from the first book, Sam. Charlie is flirty and cheeky and he meets Alice, and Charlie and Alice actually go way back, but they don't really realize that yet. Alice is a photographer who really lost her love for the work that she does, and her grandma used to take her to this small lake town which is where Charlie happens to live. And she and her grandma go to this cabin. She wants to relive a summer that she'd spent there in her younger years and rekindle her love for photography. I'm trying to remember these books, and I read them over 6 months ago, so take this with a pinch of salt. But you kind of watch Charlie and Alice's relationship bloom. You watch Alice's relationship to her passions bloom, her dynamic with her family. And I giggled so much during this, so this was definitely a favorite of the month. Once again, a book that probably would have made it into my yearly favorites list, but also there are other books that I would rank higher than this, but I just had a great time. It's always, I will always find it difficult to judge books because this is not a book where I'm like, this is so incredibly well written and it's invigorating and it opened my eyes, but then this had the beautiful writing and everything, but it felt very different. And like, how do you compare the two? I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but I hope you do. Oh, out of March and April, so These Letters End in Tears and All Fours was my favorite. Then after One Golden Summer, the next month, I read Funny Story by Emily Henry. And Emily Henry is our OG summer romance writer, of course. And I hadn't read Funny Story yet, and I thought that it was very sweet. It's about Daphne and Miles, and Daphne and Miles are both dumped, and their exes are now with each other, and Daphne needs a place to crash, and while they are coping with their own heartbreak and processing their past relationship, a friendship blooms between them, and then you know how it goes when two main characters are in a romance book, so it was just very sweet. Out of the two, of One Golden Summer and Funny Story, One Golden Summer was definitely my favorite. I really don't know what I'm doing with these books in my hands, but One Golden Summer was the favorite. Then on my Kobo, I read Promise Me Sunshine. That was in July, and I really liked that one as well. It was very wholesome. I felt like it had a lot more depth than I had expected, but this follows two characters. I don't really remember their names, but that's fine. But the FMC is dealing with the loss of her best friend, so she is deep, deep, deep in grief. And the MMC she meets through a babysitting gig or a nannying gig. He is kind of involved in this kid's life, but he is a very broody character, doesn't talk much, is hard to get a grasp on at the beginning, and then slowly they form a connection and he starts to open up, she starts to open up, and he really helps her navigate her grief. And I thought that that was very beautiful, and the romance, while it is a prominent thing in the book, it felt almost secondary to whatever else was going on, and I really appreciate that in a romance. It was a slow burn. I love that. You can probably tell in my preferences within romance is that it's very friendship and connection based and more slow, and that's just how I prefer it. So it was a good year in regards to reading that. So Promise Me Sunshine was my favorite of July, and then in August I read Sunrise on the Reaping from Suzanne Collins, which was Haymitch's story in the Hunger Games saga. I loved it so much. It was, you know how after years when an author comes out with a story based on like the story that you know already, or like a spin-off-ish type of thing, or exploring it more, it's kind of just hoping that it'll be what you want it to be. And I feel like with her books, with Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as well as Sunrise on the Reaping, they really, really delivered. I could not be happier. I'm not going to talk about the plot too much because I feel like if you know, you know, and if you're not into the Hunger Games, you need to get started with the Hunger Games first. But that was definitely my favorite of August. And out of July and August, so we have Promise Me Sunshine versus Sunrise on the Reaping, and Sunrise on the Reaping definitely won for the months of July and August. Then in September, I read The Wedding People. This was such a fun read as well. I know that there are very mixed opinions about this book, but I'll read the back to you. Phoebe Snowden arrives at a grand beachside hotel in Rhode Island wearing her best dress and least comfortable shoes. Immediately, she's mistaken for one of the wedding people, but she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall Inn who isn't there for the big event. When the bride discovers her elaborate destination wedding could be ruined by a divorced and depressed stranger, she is furious. Lila has spent months accounting for every detail and every possible disaster except for, well, Phoebe. Soon both women find their best laid plans derailed and an unlikely confidant in one another. This was such a fun concept to me. Maybe fun isn't the right word, because Phoebe goes to this hotel because she wants to end it all. Lila discovers that and she's like, not at my wedding. Not at my wedding. That's not gonna happen. This is my weekend and you are not going to become dead while I'm here. And that is just, it was so funny. There is a lot of humor in this. It's also very emotional at times. Definitely, a trigger warning around that topic. Have a look into it if you're sensitive to it. But for me, this was a very comforting read. I read this while I was feeling quite depressed, but I really liked it. I also annotated it. This felt like a woman just rediscovering her zest for life, and I really appreciated that. It's never too late to start again, and to change things up. And I think that that's a really beautiful reminder. So that was my September favorite. Then in October, as you may or may not know by now, I read The Hobbit, and it was the only book that I read in October. I'm not going to talk about it because I've talked about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings enough now. I know that a lot of people are like, you can never talk too much about it, but it gets very repetitive to keep talking about it, so... It was my October favorite, so out of September and October, The Wedding People and The Hobbit, The Wedding People was actually my favorite. Now, I had a really hard time deciding which one was my favorite because, I had the most wonderful time with The Hobbit, but emotionally, The Wedding People really touched me. I didn't want to choose out of these two, which is why I feel like the system really isn't working for me, because they would both make it onto a favorites list. But for this system, I had to choose, and then I chose The Wedding People. Because in November, I read the first book from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I loved it so much that it became my favorite out of November and December, because right now I'm reading the second part. So I felt like Lord of the Rings already got its place in my list, so I felt quite good about that. And so those were my favorites of each month of the year. So we've got The Great Alone, Out of the Woods, These Letters End in Tears, All Fours, One Golden Summer, Funny Story, Promise Me Sunshine, Sunrise on the Reaping, The Wedding People, The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Two Towers. And then it became a decision out of The Great Alone, All Fours, One Golden Summer, Sunrise on the Reaping, The Wedding People, and The Fellowship of the Ring. And then it became a choice out of All Fours, Sunrise on the Reaping, and The Fellowship of the Ring. And out of that, I had to choose my yearly favorite, which I am content with, but I don't really feel like I have one singular favorite this year because it was just so different what I've been reading. Different from each other, so take it with a pinch of salt, but my favorite of the year is All Fours by Miranda July, because this book just made me feel everything, and I felt like the writing was very beautiful. There were really beautiful quotes in here. I didn't annotate it, unfortunately. I hope to reread it at some point and then annotate it. It was very funny and honest and raw and vulnerable and ridiculous, and I've already said a bunch of words about this, but so that made it my favorite. And now for my actual favorite books of the year, let me take a moment to get rid of these books and grab a couple other ones. Because what I also do every year is that I make kind of a log sheet of what I'm reading, and that's for me the quickest way to write down the books that I have read, and then I can just put the date down and rate them and then not think about them until later. So in this log sheet, it's very easy for me to see which made it to my favorites list. And so we do have The Great Alone and All Fours, but also very loved and not mentioned is Sandwich by Catherine Newman, and I really recommend this as well. Life is a seesaw, and I am standing dead center, still in balance. Living kids on one side, living parents on the other. Nikki here with me at the fulcrum. Don't move a muscle, I think. But I will, of course. You have to. For the past 2 decades, Rocky has looked forward to her family's yearly escape to the beach. The humble, quirky house they rent has been the site of sweet memories, sunny days, shared mishaps, and memories. It is a place where her family comes together, and Rocky wants to cling to every moment. But with her body in open revolt and surprises invading her beautiful, peaceful haven, the seesaw of Rocky's life is tipping toward change. This follows a family who goes on a vacation to the beach house that they used to go to when they were younger. The kids are grown up now, and it follows Rocky, the mother, and she's just this hilarious character, and the whole family is just really funny and really a family. So they bicker and they argue and they cuddle and hug and are nostalgic and have inside jokes, and in a pretty short amount of time you really fall in love with this family. And it has a lot of layers, and I just really liked this, and the reading was so fun, and I laughed out loud at various different moments. And I'm really excited to read more by her, and that's definitely on my list for next year as well. So this did not get mentioned in my monthly favorites, but was definitely a favorite of the year. Then another one that I would like to mention is Almond. This is by Won Pyong-sun. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right, but I will read the back to you. Junye, or Yunjae, or I don't know how to pronounce it, was born with a brain condition called alexithymia that makes it hard for him to feel emotions like fear or anger. He does not have friends, but his devoted mother and grandmother provide him with a safe and contented life. But everything changes when a shocking act of random violence shatters his world, leaving him alone and on his own. Struggling to cope with his loss, Junye retreats into silent isolation until a troubled teenager, Gon, arrives at school. The two form a surprising bond, and when Gon suddenly finds his life at risk, Junye will have to step outside of every comfort zone he has created to perhaps become the hero of his own story. If you've heard about this book, you've considered reading it, but you haven't yet, you're trying to decide if you want to, it's so worth giving it a try. This was very touching and moving. It took me a little bit to get into, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it because I was just very touched. It was a very beautiful, beautiful story, so definitely a favorite of the year as well. Then I'm going to just give honorable mentions to books that I really liked this year that didn't necessarily make it onto my list, but I would still recommend. Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers, I thought was pretty good. Herfst, Autumn by Karl Ove Knausgaard, I thought was really beautiful. If You Are Dutch, Lucky Fons III heeft een boek geschreven van de goden vervuld. Die vond ik ook heel erg mooi. En Rob van Essen, ik kom er nog op terug. Of misschien heb ik die vorig jaar gelezen. Oké, maar speciale shout-out Rob van Essen, ik kom er nog op terug. Super erg gelachen, bizar verhaal. Aanrader. Back to English. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I read that the same month that I read Sunrise on the Reaping, so I had to choose out of the two, but The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was still really good. Then I read Love on the Brain by Ellie Hazelwood, and I thought that was really fun too. If you do like romance, this was very fun and quirky as well. I also read Wildcard by Elsie Silver, and I really liked that one as well. Recommend. And Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro I also really liked and would recommend and want to mention on this list. And then that concludes all of my favorite books. Maybe this video was a little bit more chaotic, but I just feel like I had a more chaotic experience in finding my favorites. And it changes a little bit from moment to moment what I feel like was a favorite, because I all love them for very different reasons. I find it hard to pick favorites, and I'm going to stop forcing myself to do so. But these are the ones that I did enjoy the most. Not ranked per se, but still a good list of recommendations if you're looking for reading inspiration. I'm really happy that I tried to diversify in my reading tastes this year. I had a really good reading year. Pretty much every book that I read, I did enjoy. There were a couple of books that I did not finish, but overall, I just had months where it was so hard to pick a favorite of the month, and I think that that's a really beautiful and fun thing, that the books are so good that it's hard to choose. So I really couldn't ask for more. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was, or just a little list of books that you enjoyed this year. I hope that you're having fun reading if you like to read, whether it's one book a year, one book every 2 years, or 56 in a year. I hope that you're having a good time with them, and yeah. Thank you so much for listening to my yapping. Here's a forehead kiss, and I will gladly see you tomorrow. All right, bye.